Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to attach and submit for the consideration of the Honorable House of Assembly the Economic Development Designation of Economic Empowerment in Southeast Edmonton Order 2023, proposed to be made by the Minister responsible for the Department of Economic Development Corporation in exercise of the power conferred by Section 2A of the Economic Development Act 1960.
Thank you, Minister Hayward. Who's holding for the Minister, Deputy Premier?
Mr. Acting Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Health, I have the honor to attach and submit for the information of the Honorable House of Assembly, the Bermuda Health Council Combined Annual Report for the fiscal year ends 2021-2022. Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. The next one is from Minister, the Honorable Colonel Birch.
Mr. Acting Speaker, good morning.
Morning.
I have the honor to attach and submit for the consideration of the Honorable House of Assembly the agreement of sale between Gardine Azetta Gibbons and the government of Bermuda regarding all that southernmost strip of land to be subdivided from property situated at 18 Secretary Lane, St. George's, GEO 5, in the islands of Bermuda, as more particularly described in the schedule annexed hereto and shown edged in red on the plan, Ministry of Public Works drawing number 55100-46804. Members should note that the proposed agreement of sale and the schedule annex will be referenced during consideration of the related motion to be taken up for debate later today on the orders of the day.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Colonel.
Secretary.
Final papers from the Honorable Minister Campbell.
Morning, Mr. Acting Speaker.
Morning.
I have the honor to attach and submit for the information of the Honorable House of Assembly, the Office of Project Management and Procurement 2022 Annual Report for the year ended December 31st, 2022, in accordance with Section 32E2 of the Public Treasury Administration and Payments Act 1969.
Thank you, Minister Campbell. Petitions, there are none. Statements by minister and junior ministers. Just let me say before you start, Premier, that the guidelines for ministerial statements is 5 pages, right? And I just want ministers to be mindful of that in future. The first paper is from the Premier, the Honorable David Burke. You have the floor, Premier.
Good morning to you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to advise the Honorable House of my recent attendance at the Joint Ministerial Council, which I'll refer to as the JMC, in London last week. Honorable members will recall that this annual meeting is convened at the invitation of the UK government and brings together all of the heads of government of the overseas territories. Joining me in London for these meetings was the Honorable Member, the Deputy Premier. Mr. Speaker, the most significant item on the agenda of this year's council was the consideration of a joint declaration between the governments of the United Kingdom and the British overseas territories. The commitments within the declaration will guide a UK internal strategy outlining how the United Kingdom will fulfill its commitments and obligations to the territories across every Whitehall government department. This joint declaration represents significant developments in the relationship between the United Kingdom and its overseas territories. Overseas territories leaders and UK ministers discussed the impact of the 2012 White Paper relating to security, success, and sustainability of the overseas territories. And there is a broad acknowledgement that the 2012 White Paper has run its course. Mr. Speaker, in preparation for the JMC, I wrote to the Minister for Overseas Territories, David Rutley, at his request, expressing our views on the proposed strategy for overseas territories and Bermuda's ambitions. I made it clear that our relationship with the United Kingdom relies upon 2 fundamental principles. The first, attaining full self-governance and enhanced representation of Bermuda's global interests. I highlighted the need for a modern partnership with the United Kingdom in which the UK will devolve powers to Bermuda and the other overseas territories where appropriate. Constitutional advancement is the ambition of all of the United Kingdom's overseas territories as we seek to devolve greater responsibility to our elected governments. Bermuda is currently considered a non-self-governing territory according to the United Nations. We stated that we desire a process of self-determination for the overseas territories through the United Nations participation in line with Article 73 of the Charter of the United Nations. Additionally, due to Bermuda's mature constitution, there must be consultation on the application of UK laws and conventions that may have an impact on Bermuda. Mr. Speaker, supporting economic growth remains a primary objective of this government. We communicated that we desire equivalent legal recognition between a British overseas territory citizen and a British citizen in travel and migration, where BOTCs require visas in jurisdictions where British citizens do not. On another matter regarding fair treatment, the overseas territories made it clear that the UK government's demands to the overseas territories must be accompanied by similar demands made to the UK's Crown dependencies. Mr. Speaker, the UK will support closer links between the British overseas territories and the Commonwealth, and we will work together to examine options for the greater participation of the territory governments and Commonwealth organizations. The United Kingdom will ensure there is, at a minimum, an effective mechanism to consult British overseas territories governments in exceptional cases when proposed new UK primary legislation extends to their territories. It was stated that the United Kingdom will improve its processes for consulting and informing British overseas territories regarding new international obligations. The commitment will respect the constitutional roles of elected governments, legislators, the United Kingdom, and appointed governors. Mr. Speaker, the JMC recognized the global leadership provided by overseas territories in critical areas. Firstly, the global environmental importance of the British overseas territories and our vulnerability to the effects of climate change, while celebrating our impact on international environmental science. Secondly, we're at the cutting edge of worldwide efforts to combat illicit finance and corruption, including increasing transparency, implementing and upholding global standards, and ensuring the implementation and enforcement of effective sanctions regimes. Mr. Speaker, the Deputy Premier and I also gave submissions to the Public Administration and Constitutional Affairs Committee. We discussed Bermuda's uniqueness amongst other overseas territories, specifically in relation to our Constitution. We addressed the need to modernize Bermuda's Constitution, our relationship with the United Kingdom, and the need for the United Kingdom to engage territories in decisions and policies that impact us. Similar sentiments were shared by elected leaders across the overseas territories. It was notable that one of the members of this committee raised the issue of the United Kingdom government's rejection of Bermuda's Cannabis Licensing Act, which was passed by this honorable House twice. Mr. Speaker, we also participated in another hearing with members of the House of Commons Foreign Affairs Committee chaired by Alicia Kearns, MP. MP Kearns has a depth of understanding of the issues relating to Bermuda and the territories and is assured that the Foreign Affairs Committee will play its part in holding the United Kingdom government accountable for its obligation to engage with the overseas territories. As such, Mr. Speaker, it was announced that a new Overseas Territories Subcommittee of the House of Commons Foreign Affairs Committee will be formed to review the Foreign, Commonwealth, and Development Office's relations with overseas territories. This subcommittee will examine how the Foreign, Commonwealth, and Development Office conducts its relationship with overseas territories and will probe how the United Kingdom government performs against its commitments to the overseas territories. Mr. Speaker, in the bilateral meeting with David Rutley, MP, Minister of State for the Overseas Territories, I took the opportunity to reinforce Bermuda's position on the security coding of Bermuda's passports. Our team, consisting of civil servants from the Department of Immigration and the London office, alongside the United Kingdom government, have worked to ensure a resolution, and we are preparing for the BMU code to be restored to Bermuda passports by April 2024. I expressed my relief to Minister Rutley that this matter has been so important to so many in this country was finally resolved. Bermudians spoke, we listened, and we delivered. At this meeting, we also shared the government's throne speech commitment regarding CARICOM, and Minister Rutley gave his fulsome support for the government's proposal to explore full membership. Mr. Speaker, the issue of of publicly accessible registers of beneficial ownership continues to remain a priority in our discussions with the United Kingdom government. Bermuda's position remains firm. We have committed to publicly accessible registers within 12 months of the publication of the implementation review of the European Union's fifth anti-money laundering directive. Bermuda will then bring into effect the legislative framework to establish public access to beneficial ownership data held in a central register, mindful of the recent European Court ruling that stated that privacy rights that may be infringed by a public register must be balanced by a legitimate interest test for those persons seeking to access that register. Mr. Speaker, finally, I had the privilege to meet with Ms. Taylor Imani Bean, who proudly represented Bermuda at the UK Youth Parliament sitting last week Friday. Ms. Bean spoke passionately to her peers about addressing antisocial behavior amongst the youth in Bermuda. Ms. Bean highlighted that the concept of communal supports in raising children has diminished and spoke about Bermuda's national youth policy, a throne speech pledge from 2020 that this government has delivered. Mr. Speaker, the Youth Parliament is to be congratulated for their work in developing an essential space for the voices of our youth to be nurtured and heard. And I'm pleased that this gathering in the United Kingdom will now be an annual opportunity for Bermuda's youth parliamentarians. Mr. Speaker, the overseas territories are a diverse family of primarily small islands, ranging from places like Bermuda with advanced economies to islands like Pitcairn with a population of less than 50 persons. There emerges a constant theme of elected leaders attuned to the unique times in which we live and whose sole ambition is to achieve the best for their people. The often unwieldy relationship with the United Kingdom government takes work to manage for the benefit of the voters in our territories. In closing, Mr. Speaker, Bermuda is a respected voice at the Joint Ministerial Council table, and we recognize that our shared commitment to developing and advancing our sister territories is worthy of the United Kingdom's full support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Premier. The next ministerial statement, in fact, the Deputy Premier has two. You have the floor. MP Rafan.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. Obliging me a moment. Mr. Acting Speaker, today I rise to introduce the annual report of the Registry General for the year December 31st, 2022. The Registry General recognizes the essential role that vital statistical information plays in planning for the provision of services in areas such as tourism, health, education, and housing, to name a few, and has performed its duties to a high standard in the recording, collating, and presenting of the data to be included in the annual report. Mr. Speaker, in accordance with Section 19 of the Registration Birth Deaths Act 1949, the Registry General shall, within 90 days after the expiration of each calendar year, compile for publication in such form and manner as the minister may approve a summary of the births, deaths which occurred during the year, together with a general report on the increase and decrease of population of Bermuda. The registrar is required also under Section 35 of the Marriage Act 1944 to publish a summary of marriages conducted each year. In preparation for the annual report, Mr. Acting Speaker, the registrar has relied on information received from the records office of the King Edward VII Hospital relating to births, from local funeral directors and medical practitioners in relation to deaths, and from local marriage officers and masters of Bermuda registered ships in relation to local and maritime marriages, respectively. Mr. Acting Speaker, the report, which deals primarily with the vital statistics pertaining to the island's residential population, indicates that there has been a slight decrease in the number of births. In 2022, there were 479 births and a decrease of 15 or 3% over the 494 births recorded in 2021. Also, the live birth rate of the population has decreased by 0.3 per thousand from 7.8 in 2021 to 7.5 in 2022. There were two babies born in the residence of the parents for the year ending 2022, which was an increase of one from the number of births born in the home 2021. Mr. Acting Speaker, the distribution of live births by nationality based on information provided by the parents at the time of the registration of their child's birth for 2022 reflects 79.3% or 380 of the total live births have at least one Bermudian parent. 2022, 99 or 20.7 of the births have parents who were both non-Bermudian. Mr. Acting Speaker, honorable colleagues, as advised that in 2022, 535 deaths were recorded among residents, a death rate of 9.2 per thousand of the population for 2022 reflects a decrease of 142 or 19.5% from 727 recorded in 2021. The report also indicates that there were 16 deaths in respect of non-resident persons, which brings the total number of deaths recorded for 2022 to 601. Also, there were two stillbirths recorded for the 2022 period. Mr. Acting Speaker, there was a decrease in 106 in the estimated resident population at the end of 2022 at 63,542 as opposed to 63,648 in resident population estimated in 2021. At the end of 2022, Mr. Acting Speaker, there were 2,500 more females than males in the population figures. However, Mr. Acting Speaker, from the report given and statistics recorded in 2018 and statistics provided for 2022, it would appear that there has been a continuous drop in population from statistics recorded prior to the year 2018. However, population estimates were rebased in 2016 after the conduct of the 2016 population and housing census. The rebase of the data is the reason why the population estimates are lower from the 2016 period forward. Mr. Acting Speaker, for the year ending 31st of December 2022, there were 336 marriages performed in Bermuda, a 23 or 7.3% increase from the 313 marriages recorded in 2021. The increase can be attributed to the relaxation of social gatherings, restrictions previously imposed during the COVID-19 pandemic, and the surge in interest of couples wanting to marry that year. Very good news, I think, Mr. Acting Speaker. During 2022, marriages between parties who were both non-residents, accounting for only 103 or 30.7% of total of 336. This figure for the third consecutive year breaks the trend where marriages between non-residents exceeded the number of marriages between residents and marriages between residents and non-residents. The report also shows that there were 211 marriages between parties who were both residents and 22 marriages between a resident and a non-resident. Mr. Acting Speaker, the total of 336 local marriages recorded in 2022, none, meaning zero, were same-sex marriages, which represents a decrease of 100% from the total of 3 same-sex marriages in 2021. As of March 15, 2022, no same-sex marriages were allowed to be performed in Bermuda as a result of the UK Privy Council's decision of March 14, 2022. Mr. Acting Speaker, 277 marriages were performed on board 28 Bermuda registered ships in 2022. This total represents an increase of 249 or 889.3% from the 2021 of total of 28. That was an 889% increase, Mr. Acting Speaker, to be clear. On the 277 maritime marriages, one was same-sex ceremony on account of the marriage was performed on February 21st, 2022, prior to the UK Privy Council's decision on March 14th of 2022. The increase is due to the cruise line industry resuming operations in October 2021 after the industry was brought to halt in March of 2020 because of the COVID-19 pandemic. The cumulative number of marriages, local and maritime, processed through the Registry General for the year ended 31st December 2022 was 613, as compared to 341 for the year 2021. Mr. Acting Speaker, the Domestic Partnership Act 2018 allowed for formalization of unions between parties. In 2022, there were 4 domestic partnership unions recorded for that period. 2 of the domestic partnership ceremonies were performed in the Registry General office, and of the remaining 2 ceremonies, 1 was performed at a hotel and 1 was performed at a home, both at an alternative approved location as allowed under the Domestic Partnership Act 2018. In closing, Mr. Acting Speaker, the annual report seeks to provide an illustrative statistical digest of vital events such as live births, deaths, stillbirths, marriages, domestic partnerships, adoptions, and re-registration of births for the year ended 31st December 2022. Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker.
You have another statement?
Yes, Mr. Acting Speaker, thank you very much. I will
Okay.
now make that statement. Mr. Acting Speaker, today I rise to speak on the government's commitment to pursue full CARICOM membership. Mr. Acting Speaker, Bermuda became an associate member of CARICOM in July of 2003. The application for associate membership was announced by the POP government under Premier Jennifer Smith in 2002. It was then followed by a process of wide public consultation to obtain public comment and feedback. Over the past 20 years, Bermuda has participated as an associate member. Mr. Acting Speaker, communications and discussions have already begun with direction to the governor by the Premier of Bermuda on Bermuda's intention to make an application for full membership of the Caribbean community, commonly known as CARICOM. The discussion was followed by an official written communication to Government House to begin the official processes of consideration by the British government. On Thursday, 17th, 2023, during a bilateral meeting with the FCDO, that's the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, with Mr. David Rutley, the issue of a future application for full membership to CARICOM was raised by Premier Burke directly with Mr. Rutley. Mr. Rutley, who described himself as a fan of CARICOM and the leadership role it provides for Caribbean countries and is familiar with the Caribbean region and its issues, expressed support for Bermuda making an application. He encouraged Bermuda to begin the process and offer which we will oblige. I will also state that the governor was also at the meeting, which included other senior members of the FCDO team that regularly deals with matters related to the overseas territories. Mr. Acting Speaker, I would like to describe what benefits have been received by Bermuda through our associate membership. And these include, under health, the Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARPA, provided public health support during COVID and continues to provide support and information on ongoing public health matters. Leadership. CARICOM members stood with overseas territories like Bermuda when the UK sought to impose beneficial ownership rules on us. Also, CARICOM continues to support us with the challenge within the financial services and banking of de-risking by the US on other small islands. Around disaster recovery, CARICOM members support each other following natural disasters, especially hurricanes. Bermuda has benefited from their support, and we also lend support to other CARICOM members. Under education, we have reestablished the opportunity for Bermudians to benefit from the University of the West Indies, a world-class institution at a lower cost than in other countries. Under athletics, Mr. Acting Speaker, Bermuda fully engaged with CARIFTA, an avenue to advance sporting excellence of our youth. Culture exchange. Bermuda participates in CARIFESTA and other regional cultural activities as an avenue for our artists and cultural advocates. Research. Bermuda has the opportunity to have access to the support from the region's most capable experts in key fields, work on key fields and work on key Caribbean CARICOM agencies. This allows us to benefit from the island perspective. Under the economy, Bermuda participates with other CARICOM, with members of CARICOM as a collective to make representations on banking and investment at an international level, supporting the Bridgetown Initiative, which targets the financing problem by creating sources from which developing countries can borrow to mitigate and recover from the climate crisis. Mr. Acting Speaker, we are now researching and exploring all that is required to make a full application. The official discussions have begun with the United Kingdom as to whether an entrustment is required or merely an amendment to an existing entrustment. Also, we are determining what will be needed for us to facilitate a full application, what steps are required, and what may be the points of negotiation we would need to initiate with the CARICOM Secretariat. We are reaching out to the Secretariat to obtain all the required information for the application. We are also consulting with other members of CARICOM about our future application to give feedback and guidance. Mr. Acting Speaker, the discussions have already begun about the process of consultation we will have with our citizens. As is the case in 2002 and 2003, which I recall, Mr. Acting Speaker, you were very much involved with those public discussions yourself. So I know you can recall the process that we went through. We know there will be interest, and we want to have discussions with our community about CARICOM, how full membership will impact Bermuda, the steps to be taken, and what the future may look like as a full member of the regional international organization. Mr. Acting Speaker, although there have been recent comments in the media about matters related to CARICOM and Bermuda as a member, we desire to be fully informed we desire a fully informed and healthy discussion to be had with all interested parties. It is important that people be allowed to ask questions, participate in discussions, look at positives and negatives, and importantly, to get the facts and answers they deserve. This is the environment that was created in 2003 before the application for associate membership was made. It will be done so again. Once we receive further information, such as the feedback required from the UK government, CARICOM Secretariat, and other relevant organizations, the public will hear early in the new year about the public consultation process. Our tasks now are to acquire all information we need so we can so we can be properly informed and have the relevant conversation with the Bermuda public. Mr. Acting Speaker, I must state emphatically that when it comes to our financial services, insurance, and reinsurance industries, we must continue our strong relationship with North America, UK, and Europe. It also needs to be understood that as a small island state, we identify and share the same characteristics with our family in the Caribbean. Right now, when it comes to issues such as climate change, energy transition, and the environment, we stand with the Caribbean region in purpose and experience. We are all challenged with these issues related to expensive, polluting fossil fuels. Mr. Acting Speaker, we are already embedded in organizations in the Caribbean, such as the Caribbean Electric and Utility Services Corporation, CARELAC, and the CARICOM Private Sector Organization, CPSO, in relation to advancing greater food security. We regularly work together with other islands on internal crime and security issues, and our legislative and regulatory models for energy sector are similar to those established in the Caribbean region. We are using, Mr. Acting Speaker, similar experiences to shape our regulations on fuels to control and regulate fuel costs. It should also be noted that when fuels are priced globally, we are grouped with the Caribbean. We are strengthening our connections related to trade in the region. Many of our commercial services we enjoy are grouped with the wider Caribbean region. Mr. Acting Speaker, let us address the elephant in the room. This being the issue of immigration and free movement of labor. There have been comments made in the public that full membership of CARICOM means mandatory requirements for us to open borders to CARICOM citizens. This is false, Mr. Acting Speaker. Let me make that clear. This is false. Being a full member of CARICOM actually allows Bermuda to have a voice and vote on matters of policy addressed by CARICOM that impact the whole region, particularly the issue around correspondent banking and de-risking. And, and as of now, the CARICOM members who have opted out of the free movement of labor are Antigua and Barbuda, Bahamas, Haiti, and Montserrat. These countries have not signed or ratified the protocol for the free movement of persons, which is one of 9 protocols that amend the Treaty of Chagan-Ramos to establish the CARICOM single market and economy, commonly known as Sesame. Therefore, they are not legally bound to grant the right of establishment, provision of services, or movement of capital to CARICOM nationals. However, they may still participate in other aspects of Sesame, such as trade in goods and services and functional cooperation. Given Bermuda's small size, I can already confirm that we would not, and I repeat, not accept the protocol on free movement of persons as a condition of membership. I must add, we have not discussed or had sight to date of any conditions of membership set by CARICOM. So such matters, Mr. Acting Speaker, are to be determined. Mr. Acting Speaker, we must recognize that most Bermudians are inextricably linked to the Caribbean through people and culture. Bermuda's history, Mr. Acting Speaker, and connection goes back centuries with the region, even before there was a United States, Canada, or the European Union as we know it. Bermuda's connections started with the Caribbean from the beginning of settlement. Many Bermudian companies have established long-standing businesses in the Caribbean. We continue to have many of our workers in a variety of sectors from the Caribbean. And finally, Mr. Acting Speaker, the world is small, and we are directly and indirectly impacted by world events, whether it be the war in Ukraine, a blockage of ships in the Suez, wildfires in Canada, or sandstorms from the Sahara. Mr. Speaker, this is not the 1980s, when views of connecting Bermuda with the Caribbean were very different among our country's leadership. It is important for Bermuda to establish relationships and alliances throughout the world. Throughout the world, Mr. Acting Speaker. It would be foolhardy to exclude relationships with other countries in the world. Thank you very much, Mr. Acting Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy Premier Raban. The next statement is from the Education Minister, the Honorable D.L. Urbane. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, colleagues and listening audience. Mr. Speaker, today I rise to provide this House and the listening public with a critical update on education reform efforts, focusing on 3 key areas: the plan to transition from a 3-tier to a 2-tier system, the continuing work around the development of our parish primary schools, and an agreement to continue the partnership with Innovation Unit. Before diving into the details, let's pause to remind ourselves why these changes are not just necessary, but imperative for the future of our education. Mr. Speaker, I ask those listening to reflect on this. 24 years ago, when the process of reforming our system to the middle school system started, the Bermuda public school system had nearly 7,800 students across 35 buildings. Today, we face a different reality. approximately 4,000 students, yet 36 buildings. Despite declining public school enrollment, it's crucial to note that public schools continue to educate more students than private institutions. Factors such as declining birth rates and emigration contribute to this trend. But what does this mean for us? It clearly indicates that we must reevaluate and optimize our resources for maximum efficiency and equity. Mr. Speaker, currently the number of students in our primary schools stands as follows. St. David's Primary, 55 students. East End Primary, 55 students. St. George's Prep, 91 students. Francis Patton Primary, 148 students. Harrington Sound Primary, 152 students. Elliott Primary, 107 students. Prospect Primary, 87 students. Victor Scott Primary, 103 students. Northlands Primary, 129 students. West Pembroke Primary, 192 students. Gilbert Institute, 64 students. Paget Primary, 114 students. Purvis Primary, 214 students. Port Royal Primary, 86 students. Delton E. Tucker Primary, 119 students. West End Primary, 75 students, and Somerset Primary, 97 students. Consider our current primary school landscape, 1,888 students that are spread across 17 primary schools, each with unique strengths and challenges. For instance, St. David's Primary has 55 students, while Purvis leads with 214. These numbers are not just statistics. They are a stark reminder of the need for a strategic approach on how we operate our schools. These numbers are a reality check that we need to put measures in place that allow us to be more efficient and equitable in how we use our funding to give our students the best chance for success. Mr. Speaker, the plan to have one primary school per parish except Pembroke is not just a change for change's sake. It is a transformation model rooted in modern-day educational practices. The recognition that in order for us to provide the services needed for today's education delivery, we cannot continue to expect to support so many school sites with so few students. Imagine the impact of having dedicated specialists in each school rather than stretching resources thinly across multiple sites. The evidence is clear. Efficiency leads to better educational outcomes. Mr. Speaker, a glimpse into the past provides insight for the future. At Clearwater Middle School, before its closure, it was revealed that 13 of the 19 staff members had a workload of less than 60% of a typical full workload of 20 teaching periods per week. In contrast, the educators formerly at Clearwater Middle School and Heron Bay Primary are now filling gaps that existed at other schools. Despite this influx, the Department of Education can still report that we are short of resources in some areas. This underscores the urgency and necessity of these reforms. Mr. Speaker, we are at a crossroads. The difficult but necessary decisions to comprehensively reform our system will shape our educational landscape for decades. We recognize the deep concern and emotional investment of our various school communities in the future of their schools. The decision to consider the closure of any school is a decision fraught with emotion and complexity, and we will approach this with the utmost care and respect for all involved. Our guiding principle remains steadfast in that every student deserves the best educational environment possible. Mr. Speaker, as previously announced, in July, a comprehensive rescoring process was initiated for parishes with multiple primary school sites except for Devonshire. This process uniquely includes a history and legacy component, reflecting our dedication to respecting and understanding the rich histories of our schools. Each school was invited to contribute to this process by nominating 3 representatives for discussion with the History and Legacy Working Group. We are awaiting this final data to make the final decisions on the school sites that will remain in the Bermuda public school system. The revisions to the 3-tier to 2-tier plan introduced for feedback in April are currently on hold pending the finalization of this process. Mr. Speaker, this brings me to the main focus of today's statement. As previously mentioned, the plan is to create a parish primary school in each parish, complete with a preschool on site, with 2 in Pembroke, which is taking shape. We have introduced parish primary schools in Hamilton Parish at the Francis Patton site and Warwick Parish at the Purvis primary site. The next 2 parish primary schools will be in Smiths Parish at the Harrington Sound primary school site and Devonshire Parish at the Elliott primary school site. The next signature school at Sands for tourism and hospitality, along with educational services signatures, will open. The scheduled opening for these schools is scheduled for September 2025. Mr. Speaker, feedback is the cornerstone of progress. Some may remember that 40 meetings occurred with schools and school communities in April this year about the proposed plan to transition public education from 3-tier to 2-tier. Many will remember these meetings were attended by passionate stakeholders with much feedback about the proposed plans. Since then, additional meetings have been held with school communities most affected by the changes. A representative group of principals have been meeting to develop the next version of the plan. While this is not finalized as a result of the rescoring process, there are important updates I wish to provide to honorable colleagues and the listening public. Mr. Speaker, I can confirm items that are changed from the plan presented in April in response to the constructive feedback from our key stakeholders. These changes are the planned transition of students from East End, St. George's Prep, and St. David's primary schools to the Whitney Institute Middle School campus will not proceed. Discussions are underway to determine options to present to the parents of the St. George's Parish and the staff of the 3 schools in this parish. However, students finishing P6 at these schools will still transition into middle school M1 until that process is complete. 2, Whitney Institute is now projected to close in June 2025 as part of the phased approach, coinciding with the opening of Elliott and Harrington Sound as parish primary schools in September 2025. The finalization of the 3-tier to 2-tier plan may impact this projection. In September 2025, all senior schools will start their 5-year programs. This means that students in M2 and M3 will transition to senior signature schools at that point. Until completing the phasing out of the remaining middle schools, students will only do M1 and M2 before transitioning to a senior signature school. Another change to announce is that Cedar Bridge Academy and the Barclay Institute will add additional tracks of arts and culture and sports and leisure management, respectively, to their current signature learning programs for opening to students in September 2025. Mr. Speaker, as a result of the ongoing rescoring process, many questions remain unable to be answered regarding the final 3-tier to 2-tier plan. The timelines for opening new parish primary schools or closing surplus primary schools, phasing out middle schools, and launching new signature schools are contingent on this critical process. However, as we navigate these changes, our focus remains on preparing our schools and communities for success. Mr. Speaker, now let me transition to what is happening to ensure schools and school communities are adequately prepared to make the most of these learning environments to improve student outcomes. Let me specifically focus on the recruitment of teams for the next phase of school transformation and the progress made in that regard. Mr. Speaker, when we last met in this place, I reminded colleagues about the ongoing recruitment process. As we navigate these changes, our focus remains on preparing our schools and communities for success. I'm thrilled to announce that over 60 enthusiastic participants in our school transformation teams for the 7 schools in transition, the Barclay Institute, Cedar Bridge Academy, Sands Secondary Middle School, Francis Patton Parish Primary, Elliott Parish Primary, Purvis Parish Primary, and Harrington Sound Parish Primary. This is a testament to our collaborative and co-design approach, which is more than reform, it's a community-driven revolution in education. Mr. Speaker, this means we have over 100 teachers, leaders, parents, community, and industry members involved in the school transformation process over the next 18 months as we continue with our existing schools in transition and bring on board our new schools for opening in 2025. I cannot underscore how positive this is for the co-design approach we have adopted for our system as we move forward. This is a major step forward for us as we move to being a country where education is everyone's business. Mr. Speaker, let me move to the final update of my statement, our ongoing partnership with Innovation Unit. Earlier this week, Cabinet approved the contract renewal with our change partners. I want to reiterate that this partnership, a collaborative venture, is integral to our reform efforts, one in which our change partners work with local teams that hold posts within our education reform unit, working groups, and school transformation teams. Let me conclude by reiterating that the philosophy adopted from the beginning of this process has been one of the absolute necessities is to have this process driven from the front by Bermudians and for Bermudians. Our team has plenty of room for anyone who wishes to join and contribute. We cannot be more open about needing education to be every Bermudian's business. Mr. Speaker, our reform will only succeed if Bermudians are prepared to continue the work once Innovation Unit has left Bermuda. The ERU currently consists of 14 skilled Bermudians working on this project full-time. This unit has 17 work streams, along with approximately 60 Bermudians working within them. Each of the 7 transformation schools has school transformation teams working, which is over 100 Bermudians. Mr. Speaker, even after all of this, there is room for more to join. Our journey is one of collective effort and unwavering dedication. We need the involvement of every Bermudian in this transformative process. Together, we can reshape the educational landscape for the betterment of all. We need more Bermuda. Bermuda, we need you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister Ravane. The next minister is Minister Tanae Furbett. You have 2 statements. Minister Furbett, you have the floor.
Yes, good morning, Acting Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this morning I rise to share with my honorable colleagues the launch of a 6-month dementia care services pilot program by the Ministry of Youth, Social Development and Seniors to ensure persons living with dementia who are uninsured or underinsured have access to dementia care community support services. Mr. Acting Speaker, as you know, Bermuda is experiencing an aging population. Recognizing this, the government promised to develop a national senior strategy with an emphasis on dementia care. Mr. Acting Speaker, I will be providing this honorable House in the upcoming weeks an update on the work that has been done to develop a national senior strategy. However, as it relates to the element of dementia care, the Ministry of Youth, Social Development and Seniors has already commenced the emphasis on dementia care with past initiatives that have been introduced and implemented to engage and educate the general public about dementia care in Bermuda. Mr. Acting Speaker, as a reminder to my honorable colleagues, in 2021, the Ministry of Youth, Social Development and Seniors designed and launched an educational campaign focusing on dementia care. The aim was to inform and engage those families, caregivers, and the general public who had family members or encountered someone with dementia or who may have been at risk of developing dementia. The campaign included a 6-month radio talk show to discuss topics such as tips for supporting persons with dementia, living safely with dementia, communication, and when to seek help. The campaign also covered 3 panel discussions on what is dementia and caregiving and controlling frustrations, online dementia training resources, hiring in-home help, community care options versus daycare, emotional well-being, protection and welfare, preventative and advanced directives, and the power of essential oils for caregivers and persons living with dementia. Also, a social media campaign, educational campaign was implemented, as well as distribution of dementia help cards that were provided for people with dementia to carry with them for ease of asking for help or assistance when out in the community. Mr. Acting Speaker, the public was also introduced to the Alzheimer's Society Learning Hub, which offered online dementia courses in the areas of Introduction to Dementia Journey, Understanding Dementia, Understanding the Early Stages of Dementia, Engaging with People in the Early Stages of Dementia, Responding to Distress Behavior, Creating Dementia-Friendly Environments. Mr. Acting Speaker, these educational campaigns laid the foundation for alerting the broader public about dementia, identifying what it looks like and how each of us can participate in supporting our family members and friends who are experiencing dementia, or perhaps displaying signs of oncoming dementia. Mr. Acting Speaker, according to the World Health Organization and Alzheimer's Disease International, the number of people living with dementia worldwide is currently estimated at 35.6 million. This number will double by 2030 and more than triple by 2050. Based on the Bermuda 2010 census of population and housing, only 200 persons reported Alzheimer's disease as a health condition they had. This was more prevalent in females at 167 compared with 33 males. However, Mr. Acting Speaker, seniors 65 years and older are projected to increase to 24.9%, or roughly one quarter of Bermuda's population, by the year of 2026. Therefore, it is expected that the number of persons living with dementia in Bermuda will rise, and the lack of community-based dementia care support service will heighten care crisis scenarios, including caregiver burnout, hospitalization, and emergency room visits, premature long care placement, and senior abuse and neglect cases. In fact, Mr. Acting Speaker, in the recently released report by the Ministry of Health, Bermuda Joint Strategic Needs Assessment of Health, in 2021, dementia ranked first among 10 adult mental health conditions diagnosed in Bermuda, with a total of roughly 1.3 million paid for claimed services. This ranking, of course, is reflective of the high demand for dementia care services in Bermuda. Mr. Acting Speaker, let me step back and share that dementia is a degenerative disease with no cure and limited available medical intervention. Based on data collected by the Action on Alzheimer's and Dementia Charity, roughly 3,000 Bermudians currently live with dementia, and 80% of dementia care is undertaken by family members who report high levels of caregiver stress and burnout. However, research has indicated the importance and value of key interventions to facilitate improved well-being of persons with dementia and their carers in their homes. These two areas are critical to address due to their overall impact, not only on the persons directly experiencing dementia, but also on health and care systems. Mr. Acting Speaker, it is with contacts and in support of this government's endeavor to continue the emphasis on dementia that the Ministry of Youth, Social Development and Seniors embarked on designing a dementia care pilot program that would help subsidize the cost of essential support services needed particularly for uninsured and underinsured persons living with dementia. Mr. Acting Speaker, in August this year, the ministry invited those organizations that currently specialize in the community dementia care in Bermuda to submit proposals detailing a plan of services for a 6-month pilot program. Each proposal was to include a package of dementia care services that would lend improving the quality of life for persons with dementia and decrease caregiving stress through evidence-based intervention that facilitate aging in place. Proposals had to fit within a financial threshold of $48,000 and cover elements such as case management and direct intervention services for persons with dementia and their carers, tools that would be used for program delivery, proposed performance measures for program outcomes, the estimated number of persons that could be served, and qualified staffing. In the end, it is expected that this pilot program will provide the government with specific data and information on the extent and level of demand for dementia care services in Bermuda. Mr. Acting Speaker, I'm pleased to share that North Star Dementia Limited, which has already had a established evidence-based dementia care program and has connections to the care ecosystem, commenced offering dementia care services in October of 2023 for the 6-month pilot program. North Star Dementia Care will offer clients a range of assessment, care planning, caregiver education support, and case management services. These services include preliminary consultation, comprehensive dementia assessment, and intervention, including crisis support during working hours, ongoing monitoring, and general case management services pending the assessed need. Mr. Acting Speaker, dementia affects different persons in different ways. Therefore, service plans developed for clients will be dependent on their respective needs and complexity. An initial assessment will be provided to all clients, while a comprehensive dementia assessment and care plan will be available for those in need, with follow-up monitoring services depending on the assessed client's needs. North Star Dementia Care is working very closely with the ministry's Aging and Disability Services section, and together they propose that roughly 30 to 40 clients can be serviced during the 6-month pilot program, pending the level of care required. Mr. Acting Speaker, Aging and Disability Services clients will be prioritized as first referrals for the pilot program. Other referrals could be sent directly to North Star Dementia from an individual, community, or professional. Data collection, monitoring, and evaluation will be critical during the undertaking of the pilot program, which will speak to the demand for dementia services, the risks and needs of the pilot population, and the level of compliance with best practice standards for dementia care and support experienced by clients. Mr. Acting Speaker, after completion of the pilot program on March 31st, 2024, North Star Dementia Care will provide a detailed report with data and information that will feed into the National Senior Strategy as an indication of the greater need for dementia care in Bermuda. Mr. Acting Speaker, in closing, I would like to share that as I have stated before, that caring for those living with dementia is a community effort, and we all need to do our part. Therefore, I encourage each person in Bermuda to support those in our community living with dementia and those who selflessly care for them. Caregiving is not an easy task, yet caregivers consistently give their all, and we are grateful for our community efforts. Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. You have another one, right?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Acting Speaker, on Friday, November 10th, the Ministry of Youth, Social Development, and Seniors held its second annual Nurturing Our Nation Parenting Expo. This morning, I rise to share with this honorable house the success of the expo and the opportunities this event presents to our parents, guardians, and members of the public to have access to valuable information and gain awareness of the support services, programs, and activities that are specifically available for our children and families within our community. Mr. Acting Speaker, let me share that a key incentive for introducing the annual Parenting Expo resulted from the data gathered annually by the Department of Child and Family Services, using a family strengths and needs assessment on all families engaged in interventions with the department. We all know that data tells stories. The data collected from the assessments conducted supported the fact that 2 of the highest priority areas for most primary caregivers, that is our parents and guardians, are in need for greater support in coping skills and parenting skills. Mr. Acting Speaker, knowing that our parents were seeking greater assistance in these areas pushed the drive to find ways to ensure primary child caregivers are giving the support and tools through the promotion and awareness of and the many services available within the community. The Parenting Expo was held on the front lawn of City Hall and brought together in one centrally located space the diversity of services offered that assist parents and guardians in developing coping mechanisms and enhancing parenting skills to nurturing our children. Mr. Acting Speaker, in addition to the Parenting Expo this month, the ministry will be highlighting on all of its social media platforms the live stream panel discussions held last year with industry professionals, which covered a broad range of topics that were of interest to our parents, and these included personal care and well-being, effects of bullying and domestic violence on children, nutrition and meal planning, boundary setting for your child, and co-parenting and nurturing parents. Also, last year, the ministry intentionally introduced parenting tips for each month that were promoted on the ministry's social media platforms. These tips will continue to be highlighted for the remainder of this year and throughout 2024. Mr. Acting Speaker, the Ministry of Youth, Social Development, and Seniors, inclusive of the Department of Child and Family Services, is committed to providing alternative ways to promote and raise awareness for parents and guardians so that they are equipped with practical solutions and resources to raise happy and confident children. Mr. Acting Speaker, the Parenting Expo takes a holistic approach in ensuring that the services promoted are diverse, as we understand not all parents experience the same with their children. This year, there were 18 representative services programs in the Parenting Expo that reflected a cross-section of government ministries and departments, the third sector, community agencies, and organizations that offer support to children and families in the form of community programs, child development support and services, mental health support and services, parenting support, education support, and extracurricular activities. The various entities included, but not limited to, Bermuda Archery, Be Smart, the Child Development Program, Department of Education, Early Childhood Education, Preschool Awareness and Registration, Department of Education, Middle School Awareness and Registration, the Coalition for Protection of Children, the Department of Child and Family Services, Endeavor Program, the Family Center, In Motion School of Dance, the Ministry of Education, Education Reform Unit, the Mirrors Program, Mayvera Wellness, Tomorrow's Voices, WinReach, Women's Resource Center, Department of Health's Child Care Regulation Program, Department of Health's Oral Health Program. Information pamphlets were also distributed on behalf of Bermuda's National Bermuda Youth Library. Mr. Acting Speaker, each participant had a booth-style display that allowed attendees to interact and engage, gather pamphlets, and enjoy giveaways. Many of the participants provided play areas, games, and live demonstrations to create a fun-filled, interactive, and informative environment. As a representative from each participating organization made a brief speech emphasizing their service, program, and/or activities that they offered for parents and children. Mr. Acting Speaker, as our public schools were on break that day, both parents and children attended the Parenting Expo and experienced a fun but informative afternoon. The feedback from participants and attendees had been very encouraging, underscoring their appreciation for and importance of having the Parenting Expo annually. And I look forward to the third annual Parenting Expo in 2024. Mr. Acting Speaker, I encourage any organization that provides services, support, or extracurricular activities for children and families who would like to know more about the Parenting Expo and potentially participate next year to contact the Ministry of Youth, Social Development, and Seniors on 444-2466. Be a part of this annual event as we work together to strengthen our families. Mr. Acting Speaker, I take this opportunity to thank all of the participants and persons who attended the second annual Parenting Expo. The Mayor of the City of Hamilton, the Town Crier, the staff at the Corporation of Hamilton, members of the organizing committee, specifically all the members of the Parenting Expo planning team who worked diligently despite the challenges they faced to communicate without computers and emails in some instances to make the Expo a success. I appreciate their continued commitment to our children. Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker.
Thank you, Minister Ferbert. The next ministerial statement is from Minister Hayward, Minister of Economy and Labor. Mr. Hayward, you have the floor.
Mr. Speaker and honorable members, today I lay before the House the Economic Development Designation of Economic Empowerment Zone Southeast Hamilton Order 2023, essentially the order creating the new South Hamilton Economic Empowerment Zone. Mr. Speaker, I am extremely pleased to be here today to announce significant areas of progress with the strong partnership between the Ministry of Economy and Labor, the Bermuda Economic Development Corporation, and our key stakeholders for the Economic Empowerment Zone initiative. The Bermuda Economic Development Corporation has made substantial strides to date in creating the productive partnerships in both the public and private sectors to establish the 3 existing economic empowerment zones, and anticipates doing the same with the new proposed 4th EEZ. The first EEZ was established in North Hamilton in 2007. 2 additional EEZs in Somerset and St. George's were established in March 2011. The initiative continues to meet the government's goal of empowering businesses and residents in these designated areas. Mr. Speaker, the PLP's 2020 election platform had a goal to transform the city of Hamilton into a livable city by fostering the development of residential and mixed-use developments, not just in the city, but across the EEZs. Mr. Speaker, today I am pleased to share with members of this honorable House another milestone in the government's empowerment remit, as well as bringing the Economic Recovery Plan project to fruition. The order before the House today seeks to establish a new economic empowerment zone in South Hamilton under Section 2A of the Economic Development Act, 1968. South Hamilton has an important role as the gateway to the city, providing key commuter routes into and out of Hamilton. All commuters that reside in Western Bermuda, along with many from Eastern Bermuda, pass through South Hamilton to enter and exit the city. Additionally, it plays a key role in the economy of Bermuda as it hosts the container docks. However, the full economic and development potential of Eastern Hamilton, both north and south, has not yet been fully realized compared to the central and western areas of the city. Designation as an EEZ provides access to economic development tools to reach this potential. Mr. Speaker, respondents to a survey conducted by the Bermuda Economic Development Corporation were in strong agreement that there should be more economic investment in the area, citing such reasons as the need for investing in business refurbishment, underdevelopment, and the need for support of the many small businesses in the area, as well as the need to encourage more entrepreneurship in the area. The research also concluded that there is a need for increased investment opportunities in the area. Improvements and capital investment would not only increase business success and employment opportunities, but prospect for residential development in a mixed-use environment would increase the customer base within the proposed zone. Mr. Speaker, the area of land outlined in red on the respective map contained in the schedule of the order is proposed to be designated as an economic empowerment zone. The area recommended for EEZ designation comprises approximately 6 city blocks plus the cargo docks. The zone is almost entirely within the limits of the city Hamilton, bound by, on the west by Court Street, the north by Victoria Street, and south by Hamilton Harbor shoreline. The eastern boundary runs approximately along the eastern city boundary to include some adjacent properties. Ultimately, the total area of the proposed zone is approximately 41 acres, with 33 acres of developable land. Designation as an EEZ allows immediate access to a variety of incentives and products for qualifying business, property owners, developers, and investors that meet the criteria and ensures need for support. Specific EEZ initiatives currently available are as follows: BEDC EEZ payroll tax concession. BEDC approves up to 9 tax periods, 2.5 years of tax concessions for new startups commencing in an EEZ or existing business relocating to an EEZ. BEDC EEZ customs duty deferment. BEDC approves up to 5 years of duty deferment on capital projects or capital improvements within the EEZ, both for businesses and property owners. Reduced land tax. Currently, properties located within the EEZ have a reduced land tax rate issued by the Office of Tax Commission compared to properties outside of the EEZ. Reduce application fees on products. BEDC has reduced application fees on products for applicants located within EEZs compared to applicants for businesses outside the EEZs. Preferential interest rates on funding. BEDC has reduced interest rates on microloans within the EEZs compared to applications for businesses outside the EEZs, and the corporation negotiates with the banks and financial institutions to offer EEZ preferred interest rates and approve residential schemes. Designation as such facilitates foreign direct investment for residential and mixed-use development projects within EEZs. The corporation is actively working on additional EEZ business development and economic development products and tools with local banks, and this government's aim to facilitate further economic activity. Doing business and with an EEZ also brings the added benefit of dedicated BEDC business development officers to work specifically with businesses in each zone on business expansion and retention. In addition, dedicated economic development officers can be seen within BEDC's Uptown Development Authority, whose sole role is to connect EEZ property owners, investors, and developers together to continually regenerate opportunities in these zones. It is important to strike a balance between business development and economic development as both are interlinked to successful and sustained economic activity. In closing, Mr. Speaker, as evidenced, this government is committed to facilitating a viable, reputable business environment, as well as the development and economic regeneration of our economic empowerment zones. Evidence has shown that the eastern part of the city, both north and south, when compared to the rest of Hamilton, needs additional attention and investment and provides untapped opportunity for growth and development. We know we will have to strike the balance between facilitating investment and curtailing displacement, and have full confidence that the BEDC and Uptown Development Authority teams can achieve this with the support of this government. To this end, the Ministry of Economy and Labor will continue to make economic empowerment an imperative by creating sound, progressive policies which support investment, regeneration, and growth aligned with our economic development strategy. The creation of the Southeast Hamilton Economic Empowerment Zone through today's tabling and bringing this new zone into existence is a tangible example of this commitment and opens the door for new and existing business and economic development possibilities. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister Hayward. Then final minister statement is from Minister Campbell. Minister Campbell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. Mr. Acting Speaker, today I rise to lay the 2022 annual report of the Office of Project Management and Procurement as prescribed by Article 32E of the Public Treasury Administration and Payments 1969 Act. Mr. Acting Speaker, let me first state that the tabling of this report was delayed because of several changes in administration within the Cabinet Office. As a result, a few iterations of the report were carried out to make today's presentation possible. Mr. Acting Speaker, this report highlights the office's business units, its performance throughout the year, and the implementation of its mandate. It also provides information demonstrating ongoing work in maintaining fiscal responsibility by closely monitoring expenditures, projects, and procurement activities. Mr. Acting Speaker, the report highlights some significant results achieved during this reporting period, which include the following: changes to the office's organizational chart and management structure, statistical data showing the number of hits made to the procurement notice and award webpage to gauge online activity, report indicating no change in the number of waiver requests reviewed, but the dollar value of waivers increased, improved governance and management of client case files, increased number of compliance reviews on contract award recommendation. The office recorded a reduction in the number of complaints, increased use of the RFX drafter application and number of users, increased project and procurement training sessions to build capacity and skills for internal and external users. The time it takes to perform assessments was reduced, increased advice and guidance cases related to projects and procurement strategy planning and implementation, improved compliance audit review approach, implementation of new internal policies and procedures and guidance notes, and lastly, enhanced monitoring and control of budget expenditure with improved administrative practices. Mr. Acting Speaker, the team continues to work towards improving the quality of the internal customer experience by having more face-to-face interactions, being the centralized point of contact for project and procurement-related information, and encouraging the internal customers to learn more about project management and procurement activities. And by doing so, using the appropriate methods and means, improve their overall delivery performance. The team also used their feedback to enhance the general project management and procurement delivery processes, practices, and policies. The team used this feedback and updated the waiver and evaluation matrix forms and instructions, updated the code of practice, and project management training slides and developed good practices instruction sheets for users. Additionally, Mr. Acting Speaker, during this reporting period, the office underwent an organizational review by the Management Services Consultant Team. The outcome of the assessment indicated that certain changes were required to realize improved efficiency and optimize the framework to ensure current and projected demands could be met. 2 new posts were added to the department's chart, and new job descriptions were created to add to the office's capacity to respond more effectively across ministries in matters of public procurement. Mr. Acting Speaker, the department also undertook the revamping of all existing job descriptions to ensure they capture the new structure. These new descriptions support the good governance project and procurement case management functions and responsibilities of the office and provide a professional and high-quality level of delivery. It is pleasing to report that during this submission period, a full-time director was appointed for the first time. Additional recruitment could not be realized due to budget constraints. However, it is expected that expansion will occur during the next reporting period. Mr. Acting Speaker, the department continues to provide project and procurement oversight, advisory services, and guidance to public officers. There was a continued increase in demand for support from various levels of management and administration this year, and the office was able to assist in maintaining efficiencies and effective service delivery across ministries. Improved awareness of processes and procedures has lessened the risk of non-compliance and increased efficiencies for fiscal activities. Mr. Acting Speaker, the last point of note is that the ministry would like to take this opportunity to thank the Office of Project Management and Procurement Team for consistently delivering its specific mandate, goals, and objectives. We also appreciate the public officers and their partners for their outstanding efforts and dedication in supporting and implementing this work to ensure that value for money is obtained and the code of practice for project management and procurement principles are continually upheld. Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker.
Thank you, Minister Campbell, I'm sorry. Sorry. The next item up is report of committees. There appear to be none. Now we have the question period which is 60 minutes. And there are some questions for first the Premier from MP Cannonier. Cannonier, you have the floor.
Yes, and thank you, Acting Speaker. With the JMC, I guess what I was interested in was a statement that you had made that on page 3, it was notable that one of the members of this committee raised the issue of cannabis licensing and our relationship with the UK and what's taken place thus far. The question that I have is, has some of the other JMC members experienced a similar type situation, or have they been moving in the same direction that Bermuda has?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in response to the question, the reference on the statement was, as I said, at the Public Administration and Constitutional Affairs Committee, where unprompted to us, it was not part of our submissions, but it was a comment from a member of the House of Commons of the fact that the democratically elected government had passed something through the House and the United Kingdom government rejected it. And it was his view and opinion that that was not in keeping with democracy and the way it should be in a modern time. And it was from that particular aspect. With regards to the question of what other jurisdictions are doing, as far as I know, the only jurisdiction that has looked to make changes to its existing cannabis regime has been the British Virgin Islands. And I do believe that they, I'm not exactly certain of where they have advanced to.
Thank you, Premier. Any further questions, Mr. Cannonier? Yeah, supplementary.
Does the Premier plan on following up with the JMC members to maybe, because it was brought up by another member, I would assume that then it means that there's some support, and certainly with the members of the JMC, their support going to the UK is important. So is it a plan to continue with this discussion with the JMC and getting support from them as well and moving in the right direction with what we've already passed in the House?
Thank you for the question. At this point in time, there's no plans on following up with other, I guess, overseas territories in regards to what there is. There's continued engagement from the Attorney General's chambers with the United Kingdom government regarding this issue, regarding the specifics, and continued representations continue to be made from both the government side and also the opposition side in the United Kingdom regarding what we believe is an unacceptable space where democratically elected governments have passed particular items which have been rejected by the United Kingdom.
That's it. The next, oh, I'm sorry.
Supplement, sorry.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Ms. Kenner, and that's your second
Thank you very much.
supplementary.
Did anything come up or were you made aware of potentially any areas that or possibilities on how we could get that through? Did any solutions come up at all?
In these discussions, not particularly, it was not the focus of our discussion in the United Kingdom. This was something that was mentioned by somebody else. It was something that we had raised in the bilateral meeting, just to note that the continued work is going on, and the UK maintains the position of which they have held. So it wasn't a focus of the work that we did when we were over there. This is a matter that was raised by a member of the UK House of Commons, but it wasn't the focus of our discussions in the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Premier. Any further? No. Right. Second question,
Yes.
continue.
Yes, thank you, Acting Speaker. On page 2, the Premier mentioned about first paragraph and enhanced representation of Bermuda's global interests, highlighting the need of a modern partnership. Could the Premier give us an idea of that global interest that he's mentioning? He somewhat answers it in the second, the sentence following, but I'm not sure if that's comprehensive. On page 2, I'll read the full sentence then. I made clear that our relationship with the UK relies upon 2 fundamental principles, attaining full self-governance. We're clearly aware of that with the Premier and where he's moving, and enhanced representation of Bermuda's global interest. And then the following sentences, I highlighted the need of modern partnership with the UK, in which the UK devolved powers to Bermuda and other overseas territories where appropriate. The question again is could the Premier give us an idea of when he says those Bermuda's global interests, what those are?
Happy, Mr. Speaker, if I may. Happy to expand, as I'm sure the honorable member who served in this position knows and recognized full well that on the international stage, Bermuda, it finds it very difficult to represent and stand up for its own interests because oftentimes we are sat behind the United Kingdom, part of the United Kingdom on international affairs, even though we want to make sure that we engage directly. Oftentimes that is stunted because other countries require us to go through the United Kingdom, and we cannot always rely on the United Kingdom to represent Bermuda's interests, as those interests may be different than the United Kingdom's. And that is a particular challenge that has been experienced. I'm sure that he experienced in his time in office. I know that we've experienced in our time in office. It is sometimes incredibly frustrating and dealing in matters of the international spheres. I mean, there's a matter that we're dealing with the OECD right now, where the United Kingdom has decided to not give Bermuda the same treatment that it's given the Crown dependencies in a negotiation with the OECD, which was something that I raised with the OECD Secretary General. And now the United Kingdom is trying to fix the issues. But these are the challenges of which we have. Of course, they're the ones that have the international vote and voice. We just get to make whatever representations, but in the end, it is important to remember they are as according to the United Nations, the administering power. They represent our interests globally, and in that representation of our interests globally, we do not always get, I would say, the Bermuda perspective relayed to international organizations, which continues to be a challenge.
Thank you, Premier. Anything further, Mr. Kenya? No. Okay. The next question is for Minister Robon from the leader of the opposition, Mr. Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker, and good morning, sir, and good morning to the listening public. Would the Honorable Minister be able to clarify some statements he made much earlier? Mr. Acting Speaker, with your permission, I'd like to read a portion of that statement where he said that official discussions have begun with the United Kingdom as to whether an entrustment is required or merely an amendment to an existing entrustment. This is to proceed with CARICOM membership or full CARICOM membership. And he also said that this is on page 5, that the government is currently researching and exploring all that is required to make an application. And the government is also in discussions to outline the process of consultation. So my question is, why is the government pursuing engagement with the United Kingdom on this issue prior to consulting with the public?
Continue.
Mr. Acting Speaker, it is important that we consult first with the administering power, as the Premier described the UK, before venturing into any possible development of relationships with international bodies.
Mhm.
That is the appropriate way for us to begin this. We must start with the UK, and then from there, we make our further steps following discussions with them on an official level.
Thank you. Mr. Richardson, another question?
Thank you. Supplemental, will the consultation process as outlined on page 5 include a referendum to proceed with CARICOM full membership?
Mr. Acting Speaker, I'm unable to make any submissions to the House on part of the question. I can say, as I made very clear in my statement, that public consultation will be a part of this process. As we did in 2003, we will take the same exhaustive approach in a future process of public consultation.
Thank you. Mr. Richardson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. Second question.
Uh-huh.
Yes, I thank the Honorable Minister on page 3 outlining some benefit as it relates to associate membership for CARICOM. Would the Honorable Minister be able to outline the benefits of full membership?
Mr. Raban?
The same benefits that we get as associate membership, we will retain with the possibility of full membership. There will also be the opportunity to directly be involved with the policy discussions of CARICOM that are international in nature, which impact ourselves. And so a fuller membership does have the potential to ensure that Bermuda is a part of the full decision-making process of CARICOM as an international body, particularly around matters that pertain directly to Bermuda.
Thank you, Mr. Raban. Mr. Richardson?
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. Supplemental, would the Honorable Minister confirm or explain whether the government has quantified the value of the benefits that we've utilized so far through associate membership?
Mr. Raban?
Mr. Acting Speaker, it depends on what you mean by value. If you're just talking about dollars, that could be unlimited. But certainly the value has been, if you talk about strengthening our relationship with other countries in the region, that is a value that has been earned. If you're talking about ensuring that Bermudians, when they travel to the Caribbean, are received as are received when it comes to travel as members of CARICOM, that has been received. If you're talking about the strength of the relationships in key sectors, particularly economic sectors and other sectors that we participate in, that we have connection with the Caribbean with, all have been strengthened and have brought benefits to Bermuda. And so it depends on what you talk about value. If you're talking about dollar value, you can attach any value to a dollar value, but there have been real benefits which have been received by this country and by our residents who have traveled to the Caribbean in numbers that have increased over the years through our associate membership.
Thank you, Mr. Raban. Mr. Richardson, anything further?
Yes, Mr. Acting Speaker. Third question, please.
Uh-huh.
Thank you for the minister outlining the benefits of associate and anticipated benefits of full. And this question relates to cost. How much does associate membership cost at this time?
As it relates to associate membership, I believe the fee is $50,000 at the moment. Obviously, any additional development, if we do eventually have full membership, that will be a part of the discussion. If anyone goes on and reads any information about CARICOM, there is no precise number. It talks about a reasonable reasonable compensation for full membership. It doesn't give an exact number. And I do believe, Mr. Speaker, it will be based on certain formulaic process, but all would be is what we, as we venture into this process, we will explore and get precise information on that we can share with the public.
Yes, thank you. Would the Honorable Minister supplemental, please, Mr. Acting Speaker? Would the Honorable Minister be able to speak to how much cost has been contributed to CARICOM? He mentioned disaster recovery, that we've lent support to other CARICOM members. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, any monies that we've spent in relation to activities that we participated in with other countries is a matter of public record, will be in past budgets. So I would encourage the honorable member to go back and look at past budgets during the years where we did participate in such activities overseas within the CARICOM jurisdiction.
No, thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to know if the minister can quantify the value of CARICOM coming to our aid in 2018 when the United Kingdom, our administrative power, put a order in council for public registers of benefits. Beg pardon? He did mention that. The question is about the value of CARICOM standing up for us, right? Our association.
You went specific to 18.
Okay, so
If you
may I
can-
rephrase my
Yeah.
question? Mr. Speaker, may I rephrase my question?
Certainly.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask the minister, the Honorable Minister, Deputy Premier, the value of CARICOM coming to our aid whenever the United Kingdom, our administrative power, has sought to put us underneath the bus in regards to our international business sector.
Thank you, Mr. Famous.
I wish to thank the honorable member for the question. Such support has been invaluable to us as a country. To have a number of countries support Bermuda in particular, when we have been confronted with challenges, whether it be with the OECD, with the EU, because these are challenges that they face as well. They have more than once come to our aid, and this has been invaluable. If I can attach a value to it, invaluable to the interests of Bermuda.
Anything further, Mr. Famous?
Yes, I have a supplementary, Mr. Speaker.
Continue.
Mr. Speaker, would, in the same vein, would CFATA fall underneath CARICOM?
No, I do not believe that CFATA does fall under the CARICOM umbrella, Mr. Acting Speaker.
Anything further, Mr. Famous? That's it? Okay, the next set of questions is for Minister Rebane from Ben Smith. Honorable Member Ben Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. I'd like to thank the Honorable Minister for this thorough update on the reform of education. Specifically on the area, giving the kind of updated numbers of students in schools and students in what has happened from what it was historically to where we are now. I'm wondering if the minister has received any data or information that would have said there has been changes to certain school numbers since the reform has come out. To be more specific, has he seen migration from certain schools that are potentially going to be closing in the future that would have shown a decreased number now that we see in this statement? Thank you.
Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for that question. In actual fact, we do monitor the numbers, and we are in the process of the date of the report that reports on the number in schools is released at the end of November. And so we're waiting to the end of November to release what the comparison is from last year to this year, which will compare schools as well. But I would also like to point out that part of the ability to give parents an understanding of what is coming is, in fact, to give parents the opportunity to make the best decisions for their children, which may mean that they are shifting from schools they know are going to close in the future or not registering at schools that may close in the future. So it is intentional to give parents as much of a view into the future of the education reform so they could make informed choices about their children's attendance.
Thank you, Minister. Anything further, Member Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker, and thank you for the minister's response. I'll wait for the information for that report. But a further question.
Your second question?
Second question, yes, thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Acting Speaker. The minister pointed out that the Purvis Primary has the lead number with 214. Can the minister please provide us what the intended capacity will be for each of the parish primary schools at the conclusion of this reform process? Thank you.
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, that information is in the public domain. It's always been part of our reform process as we came out in 2020 with the parish primary school report and consultation process. We talked about what the maximum numbers predicted should be. Those will continue to change. At that time, we spoke to around 300, just over 300 students per primary school, with class sizes that would range from 15 to 18 per class.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. MP Smith?
Thank you. Supplementaries. Is the minister able to provide whether Purvis Primary being the one that has the highest number, are they close to capacity?
Mr. Speaker, Purvis Primary being one of the larger schools that we do have, currently has 2 streams in some of the school years, 2 streams in all of the school years, but recognize they do not have a P8 yet, and so we anticipate P8 being 2 stream as well. The approximate size of the classes at Purvis range from 18 students per class and down.
MP Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. I would hope that one of the goals at the end of this reform would be that more parents would want to put their.
You got a question?
No. So my question is based off of, is there going to be capacity for the hope that more parents are going to want to move their students to public primary schools? So I just want to make sure that we have a situation where that capacity has been built into the reform.
Minister?
Thank you again for that question. Again, that is something that is in the public domain. When we did the exercise, the consultation around the parish primary schools, the predicted numbers that we had, and at that time, were around 70%. Schools would be around 70% full if everybody came back. So the capacity is built in. And I want to also take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to point out that as of September, the numbers that were collected in September when school started and the numbers that have come in at the middle of October, there are 15 more students that have transferred back into the public school system from private.
Great. Thank you, Minister. MP Smith? Jackson, you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you. I'm just, as I'm listening to the capacity of the parish primary schools and the growth, and fully aware of the buildings, the additional buildings, I'm just curious if the minister will be able to give us any indication of the costs for construction and building in order to adapt and accommodate the additional students coming into the parish primary schools.
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, this year we approximately we have budgeted for this fiscal year, we budgeted just under $5 million for the works that was needed at Purvis and Francis Patton. As I said in the statement, we are finalizing the 3-tier to 2-tier plan, which will then determine which schools will be remaining in the system. And at that point, we'll be able to put together a much more accurate understanding of what construction works is needed. And trust me, that is something that Public Works is yelling at us about now. And it's something we want to get in place so we can go out and say, this is what it's going to look like over the next 10 years of development or however long it's going to take.
Thank you, Minister. Anything further, MP Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. My question now is
Well,
on
you get
teachers.
3 questions. You got a supplementary?
My second one was a supplementary to,
Well, you didn't say it, but go ahead.
yeah, I apologize,
No
Mr.
problem.
Acting Speaker. This question is about teachers. So as we shift towards a lower number of schools, the minister has stated on page 2 that we've had to shift some of the teachers to the new schools. Is the minister able at this time to give us what that total number of teachers and staff that will be needed at the end of this reform, and whether that number is lower than the amount of teachers and staff that we have today?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, tricky question. Mr. Speaker, as I repeatedly say, that it'll be our effort to retain as many of our teachers as necessary. I cannot stand before Bermuda and say and promise that every single teacher will be retained, but I cannot stand in front of Bermuda and say who will not be retained. This will be developed as we move along. The Education Reform Unit has one of their working groups is dedicated to what the future working force and skill sets of the future working force. And we will give every single person an opportunity to skill up, do whatever needs to be a part of this system. And it's not our intention to send people home just because we want to send people home. As I stated, Mr. Speaker, right now we have teachers that are stretched between school buildings where we cannot give dedicated staff to various things that are needed within our buildings. That's the type of things that need to change. And when we do change, I'm almost assured that I can almost assure Bermuda that we will have the number of staff that need to be in place for today's modern education system with all of the support systems that are needed.
Any further questions? The next question is to Minister Tanae Furbert from Ms. Jackson. Ms. Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. I just want to reference on page 3 of the minister's statement. There was mentioned that 1.3 million was paid in claimed services in 2021. And on the same page, it's speaking to the roughly 3,000 Bermudians that are currently living with dementia. So my question to the minister is, what is being done to forecast and accommodate for the claims that caregiving is going to stress on our insurance? And in particular, I'm thinking of future care because we do have the caregiver benefit in future care. Given that we're now looking at what could soon be 3,000 or more, what is being done to be able to afford the caregiving?
Minister Furbert?
Good morning, Deputy Speaker. Thank the member for that question. I would like to defer that question to the Ministry of Health. If you can provide that by way of a question to them. But I do also encourage you and urge you to read the Bermuda Joint Strategic Needs Assessment of Health. It's a public document.
Any further questions, Ms. Jackson?
That was it.
Okay. The next question is to Minister Haywood from Ms. Jackson.
Yes, this question is around the development of the Southeast Hamilton EEZ. I'm just curious whether there is any planning, sort of town design or planning around the development of the Southeast Hamilton EEZ in particular, because it is such a heavy volume and a very visible part of the EEZ, and whether there's any planning that goes on around that, if there's going to be urban planning Just so that, not so much that we are dictating what is going to happen within that zone, but just so that we don't end up with random buildings and services and the like. So I'm just asking about whether there's any urban planning going on.
Minister Hayward.
Mr. Speaker, the answer to the question is that urban planning has taken place, and that will be in the current City of Hamilton plan. The Southeast Hamilton EEZ was not excluded from that plan, so it was included in that plan. And then consultation has taken place on the 2023 City of Hamilton plan as well. And so certainly it will be factored into that plan, any sort of specific area planning.
Anything further, Ms. Jackson?
Nothing more, thanks.
Okay, the next question is to Minister Campbell, and that's from the opposition leader, Mr. Richardson. Mr. Richardson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. Would the Honorable Minister be able to clarify? In his statement, he said that, I would like to read with your permission, Mr. Acting Speaker.
Yes, you may.
On page 1, at the very bottom, he says, the report highlights significant results achieved during this reporting period. And 3 of that is the report indicating no change in the number of waivers requests reviewed, but the dollar value of waivers increased. Would the Honorable Minister be able to speak to why we're seeing an increase in the dollar value of waivers?
Minister Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. That's simply a factor of the cost of those projects or items that were being requested to be waived.
Anything further, MP Richardson?
None. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. That ends the question period. And the next agenda item is congrats and the bits. Premier Burt, you have the floor.
Turn my mic. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this morning I rise on a sad note, and I would ask the House, and I would like to associate certainly all members of this honorable House with this note of condolences and request the House to send a letter to the family of the late Lois Weeks, who is the mother of Minister Michael Weeks, who sadly went on to glory yesterday. Mr. Speaker, Aunt Lois, as we refer to her, was a constituent of Pembroke West Central, someone who I certainly knew well before I represented her in this honorable House. She was unquestionably a stalwart of the Pembroke community, who was one of the first Black women to be hired to be a bank teller at the Bank of Butterfield, as well as many years working at the Hamilton Princess. She dedicated much of her time to charitable and community endeavors. Of course, a member of the St. Paul A&E Church as well, where many of her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren continue to be members and parishioners there. Aunt Lois has an amazing legacy of family. Aunt Lois had 12 children, 6 boys and 6 girls. She had 38 grandchildren and numerous great-grands and great-great-grandchildren. She was certainly a pillar of the community who passed away after 98 years of life in Bermuda. We are all saddened. We've all expressed our condolences directly, of course, to the Minister of National Security and to the rest of his wider family. And I would ask this honorable House do send a letter of condolence to the family to make sure that we know that our thoughts are with them on the passing of this amazing Bermudian matriarch. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Premier. Any further speakers? The chair recognizes the Honorable Dennis Lister, the 4th or the 3rd?
Good morning, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I too would just like to make some condolences, send some condolences to some families. Firstly, to Mrs. Winifred Dielli, in her 80th year of 3 Ettrick Lee Drive of work. When I opened the paper to see that she was in the paper, I was taken back in shock because I fondly remember, as in my schooling years, she was the nurse that was stationed at Bermuda Institute. And so I fondly remember as Nurse Dialli. So it's sad to see her and would like to send condolences to her family. Also to Mr. Kirk Simmons of Fork Lane, Southampton, and Associate MP Xander Silver. I knew him, but I knew his children more as I went to school. His children and his son was actually his middle son was actually my roommate in college. So I know the family well. I would like to send condolences to them. And then also to the family of this week, we had a sad moment losing another young person due to violence, Mr. Wilfred Otterbridge. While I didn't know him personally, his mother was a colleague of mine I've worked with for over the last 10 years. So again, it's always sad for family to lose, especially a young person at the age of 35, which is still young. So I'd like to send condolences to the family of Mr. Otterbridge. And then also like to just some congratulations. This week, Mr. Reggie Lamb celebrated 50 caps for the Bermuda national football team. I can't say how many players have reached that milestone for Bermuda, but we like to recognize him and associate the house, and I would associate the whole house.
Yes.
Also, this week at the Parapan AM games, which I believe are for I want to say correctly, disabled persons. We've had some good representation from Bermuda. Miss Yushea De Silva Andrade received silver medal in her discipline. Also, we had Mr. Omar Hayward. He reached the semifinal stages in his discipline, and Miss Jessica Lewis finished 6th place in her discipline. And Bermudians are always participating and well represented in sports around the world. Also, like to send congratulations to Miss Krista Dyer, who received silver medal at the World Wushu Championships. And then also in building, Team Bermuda finished 6th place at the Race World Offshore Key West World Championship. So Bermuda is represented very well internationally and locally in sports. And again, just like to send congratulations to all of those representing Bermuda in these different disciplines.
Thank you. The next is Minister Diallo Ravane.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and I will certainly associate you with these remarks as well as all of my Hamilton Parish MPs. Congratulations going out to the Francis Patton Primary School, who was awarded the BF&M School Spirit Award this morning for their efforts in recognizing and raising awareness and fundraising for breast cancer research. And so they were awarded, they raised just under $1,400 with events that they conducted throughout the school. And what was amazing, they were given this plaque, and on the plaque it had of the last 6 awards, they had captured 5 of them. The other award was Harrington Sound at that time. So congratulations to Todd Fox and his team down there at Francis Patton, one of our parish primary schools, and certainly
What parish is that in?
That would be in God's country, Hamilton Parish. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Mr. Richardson?
Yes, thank you,
Opposition
Mr.
Leader.
Mr. Acting Speaker. I wanted to pass on my congratulations to Cobbs Hill Methodist Church on their 196th anniversary, which was well attended, and the service was wonderful. And I associate a number of persons who attended as well, including the Warwick MPs, Mr. Neville Terrell, Colonel Birch was there, and Miss Wade, member Anthea Wade. Also, I would like to congratulate the RAA for putting on a wonderful Remembrance Day luncheon. I know it's been some time since Remembrance Day, but it's difficult to keep a community club running in this day and age. So congratulations to them for another wonderful event. And I had a number of St. George's MPs there as well, including MP Ming and MP Fogo. Thank you very much, Mr. Acting Speaker.
Thank you. Minister Raban, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. I would just like to be associated with the condolences to the family of Michael Weeks and on Miss Lewis Weeks. It is difficult to perhaps in words appreciate the presence and the influence of Mrs. Lewis Weeks, particularly on the Pembroke community, but also on the Progressive Labor Party. As you would recall, a long-standing, unwavering, indomitable stalwart of the Progressive Labor Party, and most importantly, the issues concerning working people and of the issues of Pembroke. A constant fixture, as far as I can recall, always in these environments, particularly when it came to concerns about working people and our seniors, and certainly her parish of Pembroke. But it must also be stated that she was a child of the village, of the North Village, and was connected with the Dill family, who, as you would know and others would know, are a institution of the North Village and Pembroke and Devonshire areas. So I just wanted to connect to ensure that I associated myself with those remarks, and certainly reaching out to my neighbor, her son, Michael Weeks, who obviously is a member of our legislative family. Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Speaker.
And the chair recognizes the honorable member Swan.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. I'd like to be associated with the condolences to the family of Honorable Member Weeks, and also to the RAA on the remembrance service, which I do love to participate, but duty called in another part of Bermuda, and I would like to have a letter sent to those responsible for the Bermuda Championship PGA Tour event, whose winner, Camilo Villegas from Colombia, I was very proud to have been present at the ceremony, because his life of tragedy only 3 years ago, losing his infant child, to win there, and knowing that from South America, those golfers play similar conditions to ours. He's got friends in Bermuda. He's been here before. It was a good story for our event as well. The RAA family lost Miss Helen Deal, and I'd like to associate MP of Fogo, and also MP Ming, and Minister Furbert with those as well. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I picked up the obits today and was deeply saddened to learn of the passing of my friend Mitchell Watson, who I've known since childhood in that Death Valley White Hill community, where he came often to make home, and more recently in St. George's. We spoke often, considered each other friends. He was a prolific radio talk show caller and a very thoughtful person who stood very closely by the points that he felt strongly about. And we often had dialogue, and he'd often call me with personal matters as well. Mr. Speaker, it was a shock for me. He's being funeralized at 3 o'clock today at Leopards Club, and I hope to be there, but if not, I'll be there in spirit for my good friend. May he certainly rest in peace. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Speaker.
you. The chair recognizes the honorable member Crystal Caesar.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker.
Uh-huh.
Mr. Acting Speaker, I come with heavy heart this morning to recognize the passing of a constituent, and I'd like to say a good friend that I've gotten to know in my time as a candidate. Her name and my namesake, Crystal Lightborn, and I associate MP Swan, MP De Silva, and MP Ming, and also MP Famous. Crystal was always a bright spark when I met her, in spite of her health challenges in the last several years. always very positive, and I attribute that to the fact that she was able to hold on for so long because she was a positive person. As we know, that one's demeanor and attitude does help to sustain life, and especially if one has illnesses. I also want to attribute to her the idea of my somewhat famous vendor markets that we had up at the Death Valley Field just after COVID. She spoke with me, as she typically did when I used to visit, and said, Crystal, let's try and do something for the public. And I think people will remember that they became quite popular because there were quite a few people who unfortunately were not able to work as they had in the past. And quite a few young Bermudians came and were able to take part in those markets. And I credit her for that. Because it was not for her pushing me to do it, they would not have been able to be as popular as they were. I'd also obviously like to send my condolences to her family. Her three daughters, Dantel, Shanna, and Shala McGowan, sister of Craig Lightbourne and Colette Lightbourne, and other numerous family members. She will be laid to rest, excuse me, tomorrow. But Bermuda has lost a very bright spark, and she will be dearly missed. Thank you.
The chair recognize the honorable member Tanae Furbert.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. Mr. Acting Speaker, I would like to send condolences to the family of Miss Rosina Thompson, one of my seniors in Ferguson's Park. Very sharp and snappy to me every time that I would visit. But I would like to send condolences to the Thompson family, as well as constituent Robert Doe, sending condolences to his family. He was a resident of Smith's Island, but had lived in Australia over the past couple of years. And as well as constituent Richard Burrows, sending condolences to his family. I also like to be associated with the remarks of condolences for Hedleen Deal, who is a family relative of mine, was had children for my uncle. So sending special condolences to her children, Robin, Kathy, Ellen, and Dawn, and also her husband, Robert, also family within Hamilton Parish as well. And also offering condolences to the Otterbridge family, who are neighbors to me, for the death of Wilford Otterbridge Jr., JR, as we know him. Definitely wanting to send condolences to Carla and Wilford and JR's children for the tragic death of JR. Also wanting to be associated with the congratulatory remarks as it relates to Jessica Lewis, Omar Hayward, and Uche De Silva Andrade as they represented Bermuda in the Parapan Games, receiving medals, Uche, that is, with the silver and bocce. So just, congratulations to them as they definitely represented Bermuda in their prospective sports. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. The chair recognize the honorable member Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. Mr. Acting Speaker, I'd like condolences to be sent to the family of Mildred Elizabeth Louise Jones, otherwise known as Aunt Louise, she's a member of the Lewis family that are strong in the Young Men's Social Club.
Yes, they are.
She was a longtime member of, I'd like to associate the premier, associate the whole house, at least on this side of the house. They would know her, having spent much time across the street from Young Men's Social Club. She's a long-term member of the club, and as a bartender, her tough exterior hid a much softer and caring interior, and that was evidenced by her being a champion and great benefactor to the Young Men's Social Club youth program. So, and she had two daughters, Leslie and Rose Smith and Nicole Jones, and it was a large Lewis family, Brother Leroy, Eversley, Malcolm, Frederick, Dennis, and sisters Florence, Emily, and Brenda. Again, on a sad note, Mr. Acting Speaker, I'd like condolences to be sent to the family of Kevin Jermaine Kirk Peets, And again, I'd like to associate the entire house. This was a young man who was the first cousin of former Minister Peets. He was an electrical inspector in the Department of Planning that now falls under my responsibility. So there will be a miss there, and he would have to be replaced there, Mr. Speaker. But he's part of that well-known Peets family, particularly in the Smiths and the Devonshire area, many of whom are also my constituents. He had a wife, Carla, children, Zion, Ziori, Sinai, his parents, Kirk and Andrea, and his siblings, Anisha and Aisha. So condolences to his family. Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker.
Thank you, Minister Campbell. The next speaker is Honorable Member Tyrrell.
Thank you and good morning, Mr. Acting Speaker. A couple of the announcements already associate with me, so I am forced to associate myself. In fact, it would be remiss if I didn't. The first one is Mrs. Lois Weeks, who actually is a sister to my wife's mother. So I certainly bring, she's my auntie-in-law. Thank you, Epi Famous. Anyway, Mrs. Weeks was certainly one of my major supporters when she found out that I was running for the Progressive Labour Party, and being so close, I would always get advice from her. So certainly, I send my condolences to the whole family. The next one I want to associate with is actually out of my constituency, the sudden and tragic death of Wilfred Outerbridge. His mother actually is a constituent of mine. Wilfred is actually registered in my area, so I certainly have that as an association, and I bring condolences to his mother Carla and the rest of the family. The third one, Ms. Mildred Jones, is actually my constituent from the Lewis family, and it would be, as I said, be remiss if I didn't send condolences, because I can remember as a child living on Engle Street. The Lewises lived on Ewing Street, so we were like a stone throw apart from each other. And I, being one of the smallest kids in the neighborhood, Mildred would always look out for me, because the Lewis family, everybody was afraid of the Lewis family. So I associated myself with them as almost being like a cousin or something like that. So I certainly bring condolences to the family, and especially her brother, Leroy, who was associated with me at the Bermuda Football Association. And finally, Mr. Acting Speaker, I would like to associate with the congratulations to the Cups Hill Methodist Church. 196 years. That's a lifetime for a lot of people in terms of being a church in the community. They actually are part of the strength of the Ward community. So I certainly want to wish them well and well, I guess I could look forward to them hitting 200, but certainly I send my congratulations. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
Acting Speaker.
The chair recognizes the Honorable Anthony Richardson.
Good morning, Mr. Acting Speaker, to the listening audience and my colleagues. Mine is all good stuff this today, pardon the grammar. I want to wish happy birthday, and it's always difficult because you miss somebody, they say, hey, you forgot me. So I'm going to do this and say happy birthday to Corlita Darrow, Claire Perry, and I won't say which number goes to each of them, but one is 98, one's 94. Dennis Wainwright, he went 88. He is truly one of our unsung heroes, and I trust I get a chance to do an interview with him, to be honest. Cynthia Jones, she is a significant person in our branch, and Dr. Leonard Tobit, and I'll associate Minister Diallo Rabin with them without his asking. But so that's the birthdays. But also, Mr. Acting Speaker, I want to just give a significant congratulations to the community, because they organized a community forum that talks about how you can sustain a neighborhood. It was organized at the Harrington Workmen's Club. It was partly initiated by Najee Musson, who is the president, but it was hosted by or narrated by Mr. Stephen Douglas. And the participants included Cindy Weeks from Harrington Science School, St. Philip's AME Church, Crossroad Warriors Football Club, Smith's Parish Council, St. Mark's Church, Harrington Workmen's Club and Cleveland County, Marsden Methodist Church, and Miss Colette Simmons from Summerhaven. The significance was that I was invited, but not to participate, because they emphasized the fact that a community can be strengthened without government necessarily taking the lead. And what was very important was that between, say, the school and the clubs, they can actually better coordinate and cooperate, so that, for example, when Harrington Son School needs extra, like another field, they can use what is the Smith Parish field, for example. We can coordinate with a bus to get them back and forth. The Cleveland County can assist the school children with cricket. And the Smith Parish Council, for example, when they do things, for example, having a seniors tea on Saturday, next week Saturday, that we can come together. And one of the significant outcomes is that we need to develop a community calendar so that we don't unnecessarily compete with each other. And I think that
We're doing
being present.
congrats and a bits.
Yes, but it was amazing. Well,
Yes.
congrats and a bit. This is congrats.
Thank you.
Absolutely amazing, though, Mr. Acting Speaker. But you know from your time that way, so you know what I'm talking about, how
I'm from
tremendous
Fort
a
Delhi.
community it is. And so give me some time, but thank you, Mr. Acting
Thank you.
Speaker.
Any further speakers? The chair recognizes Sane Scalacci De Silva, MP.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. Mr. Acting Speaker, I'd like the House to send congratulations to a young man, and I don't want honorable members to get confused. Last session, I asked the House to congratulate Colin Harper, also known as Collie Buds, for his latest album, breaking into the top 10. So I don't want you to get confused, but I have to send congratulations to this young man yet again, and I declare my interest again.
Yes.
He is my son-in-law, but he has been nominated. He has been nominated for a Grammy, Mr. Acting Speaker.
Yes.
I thank you, honorable members, for the congrats. I think it's the first time in Bermuda's history that we've had one of our entertainers actually be nominated for that. So the entire House sends their congratulations to my son-in-law, Mr. Colin Harper. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further, the chair recognizes Honorable Scott Simmons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning. Mr. Speaker, I rise in this honorable house and join members in offering both congratulations and obits. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to first of all offer my absolute congratulations to Collie Buds for, if I may use his name as casually as I can, as calling him Collie Buds, on his most recent nomination for a Grammy. It is well deserved. It is a milestone when a fellow Bermudian indeed rises for international recognition throughout the world. And I do believe that both family and both the community, and he's my constituent, but certainly community, are as jubilant as his family are in this regard. Mr. Speaker, I also wish to rise in this honorable house, if I may, as it relates to obits for 3 Adventists who've been mentioned already, Mr. Kirk Simmons, certainly. Yes, and I like to associate the honorable member from St. George's, Mr. Kim Swan, and for Mr. George Scott Smith. But I want to recognize, and Mr. Kirk recognize Mrs. also Winifred Ann Dielli. But Mr. Speaker, if I may speak on Kirk Simmons, who's a cousin of mine, he was an absolutely buoyant individual. He was wonderful in his presentation. Whenever you saw him, he was happy. And I feel, Mr. Speaker, that he represented everything in our community, both from a sports aspect. He did play. Well, I apologize on that, Mr. Speaker. He loved golf. And he also loved his community, loved his family, he loved his church, and more importantly, Mr. Speaker, as it relates to these matters, at this time in his life, he absolutely loved God. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of all of us in this honorable house, I wish to join members in expressing to our honorable minister within this house and our cabinet the loss of his mother. It is a memorable time in his life. It's a time when he will reflect on his life with his family and with his mother. And so he should know at this time that our hearts are with him, our prayers are with him, and that as he goes through this, know that each and every one of us in this honorable house certainly feel for him, and that he can call on us at any given time. Mr. Speaker, the last person I'd like to mention in the last few minutes that I do have, he is a good friend of mine, Mr. Kevin Jermaine Peets. Kevin was a fantastic individual. He
Mm.
was a qualified and he was a capable electrician. And on many of the job sites that I've worked on, I grew in affection for Kevin, just in the way his deportment and in the way that he dispatched his duties.
Mm.
Mr. Speaker, his family have lost an absolute marker. The community has lost a professional, and we have lost someone who made an impact in his community, was loved by his community, and will continue to be remembered. To all of his family, we give our prayers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the Honorable Famous.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to join in the condolences for Mr. Peets because as spoken by his MP, Mr. Peets was part of the Devonshire Smiths community. Mr. Speaker, also from the Devonshire Smiths community, specifically Devon Heights, we've lost Mrs. Davis. Her husband was Robbie Davis of Telephone Company. Ms. Davis was a ardent Manchester United fan and salt of the earth Bermudian.
Mm.
Mr. Speaker, salt of the earth also applies to Mr. Earlston Fire Dublin of Glebe Road.
Yeah.
Glebe Road is the government name for what we call Frizzles Hill, Point Hill, St. Monica's. The Dublin family literally are on the top of Glebe Road Hill. And he will be sadly missed by all his relatives who are large. Mr. Speaker, on the subject of congratulations, I would like to give congratulations to our PLP Bahamas family on their victory, sound victory yesterday in a by-election in Grand Bahama and Bimini, where they defeated the opposition 2-1. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Famous. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member Renee Ming.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker and
Morning.
listening audience.
Uh-huh.
I start my comments today on a sad note. I'd like to have thoughts and prayers be sent to the family of Sasha Swan. She was one of my constituents, a very young lady. She had been sick and she suffered silently. Associate Campbell and Figure with that. She had young children. She was an active parent at East End Primary School, and she will definitely be missed. And her family, because I said it was young, they're definitely in our thoughts and prayers at this time. I'd also like to be associated with the comments for Kevin Peets. Kevin's wife happens to be my first cousin on the Watson side. And he was definitely, I used to say, he was a piece of work. But we loved reggae, so we had something in common. And he did a CD for me one time with some obscure reggae, and I still to this day play that CD. I'd also like to be associated with the comments for Wilfred Otterbridge. His mom, Carla, is one of my work colleagues, and I just cannot even imagine what she's feeling at this time. But condolences to his entire family and his friend group. Mr. Speaker, on a happier note, I'd like to extend congratulations to the St. George's Cricket Club for the President's Bowl. Associate MP Figure with that. Every 5 years, they look to do a gala event to remember why they are and why they are who they are, and to just celebrate. This year, the President's awardees were Collingwood Bean, Barry Sousa, Asta Harvey, Althea Richardson, Dennis Wainwright, Carlos Greaves. And these persons were awarded President's Awards for their dedication and commitment to St. George's Cricket Club. Everybody knows that community clubs, it takes a lot of work and a lot of hands to make it work. And these persons have given a lot of time to St. George's Cricket Club. And for that, they were honored on Saturday evening. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I'd take my seat, but thank you very much.
Any further speakers? Susan Jackson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. I want to send condolences to the family of Mr. Colin Young and his surviving wife, Pat, and surviving son, Breed. I'm very sad to have to say goodbye to Mr. Young, but he was in his 101st year, so he had a very good innings. And I'd like to associate MP De Silva, MP Ben Smith. And I also just want to recognize what a mild-mannered and compassionate, friendly man, gentleman that Mr. Young was. And he was probably he and his wife Pat were probably the first family that I really canvassed with and started to build a relationship. And I will always be grateful to the family for their support and encouragement. Sometimes it can be a bit adversarial as we get into across those thresholds and when we're out canvassing, but certainly the Young family has always been most gracious. And I would like to recognize and send sincere condolences to the family at this time.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Jackson. And Ms. Wade, I don't remember anything Wade Simmons. Simmons Wade.
Good
Sorry.
afternoon. First of all, I think it is really great that we include congratulations and obituaries in this house, but I think we should put more emphasis on giving congratulations in terms of people who passed the ripe age of 75. So in my constituency, thank you, MP. In my constituency, and I'm sure many of the constituencies, approximately 25, in some cases 30% of the people are over the age of 65. So my congratulations go to Carol Deacon, who's 75, Barbara Bald, who's 85, Jane Birmingham, who's 80, Lois Burnett Hicks, who's 80, Winston Lee, who's 80, George Patton, and Elmira Ming, who's 94. When I went to visit, it was very interesting because as soon as I walked in the door, she said, even if she went in a wheelchair, but she doesn't have to, she walks to the polls and votes for PLP. She was lucid, she had full capacity, and she was an amazing woman at the age of 94. Congratulations.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Colonel Birch.
Mr. Speaker, good morning. I'd like to be associated with the congratulations to Cobb Hill Methodist Church on their 196th anniversary. It's a small but amazing church. And if you know the history, it was built by slaves in the dark.
Yes, indeed.
And it was very, very uplifting to spend 2 hours with them last Sunday. The new pastor, well, new to me, Dean Smith, is someone who's well known to me.
From Harris's Bay.
And he gave a message that was worthy of 196 years.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to be associated with the condolences to Mrs. Lois Weeks, Minister Weeks' mother. I didn't know her, but I obviously know him. And so he obviously come from good stock.
Yes, indeed.
Mr. Speaker, I would also like to be associated with the condolences to the family of Sasha Swan, whose partner works for us in the Department of Waste Management. I got to know the family about 5 years ago when I ran into their twin sons, Jordan and Jericho, who are quite amazing young men. And I've checked on them since her passing, and they seem to be holding up under the stress of losing their mother, but acknowledging the impact that she had on their lives. I'd finally like to offer condolences, somewhat late as I wasn't here 2 weeks ago, to a friend of mine of almost 35 years, Miss Julia Ann Darby, who passed suddenly in October after a short illness. She was referred to affectionately by most people who knew her as the wild woman. She she brought a spirit into every space that she went that lifted everyone else's spirits. Her send-off was actually quite poignant. She was buried at St. James Church, which is in sight of where she was born and raised on West Side Road. I will fondly remember Julia for her fun and laughter. I think most people that knew her would have remembered her from just laughing out loud. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Thank you, Colonel. Let me just join in to send condolences to the family associated with the loss of Miss Liz Weeks, who was a member of St. Paul's Amy Church for over 50 years, who served as a stewardess. She was also a missionary and an usher at the church. And is on. And an usher at the church. And she passed in her 99th year. Certainly a great woman. Also like to associate the marks of Winifred Ann Wainwright. I know her as Wainwright when she was from Frogally. In fact, her father, Stanton Wainwright, was a long-term president of the Summerside Cricket League. And she's the first cousin of Dennis Wainwright, but she's Winifred Wainwright Dielli. And also like to associate the remarks on Helen Deal, who passed. And also, I think this House should send a letter to former President Carter on the loss of his wife, Rosalind Carter, the longest surviving couple in the history of America, president and wife. And she, as many of you would know, played a pivotal role in his presidency while he served in Parliament. Also, I think I want to be associated with remarks concerning Tyler Amani Bean, the second youngest Bermudian to speak in the House of Commons. She certainly resides in Hamilton Parish, and her family is very proud of her. And I know her grandfather, David Patterson. He walks around every day smiling. He's never smiled so much in his life, being so proud of his granddaughter, Amani Bean. So with that, Mr. Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for inviting me to move that we adjourn for lunch.
Yes, we adjourn for lunch and we return at 2 p.m.